All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Jface Games. Today I am doing another game design loop. I did a playtest. You probably just watched it. And now, maybe you didn't watch it. Maybe it's your first time here. I did a playtest. Go look at it. No, I'm creating an RPG. This is Jface Games. I'm out of breath. I just did pull-ups. Why? Because it's just something I like to do. So I was clearing my brain after doing the playtest, and now I am going to tackle it again. So, let's look at our design loop again. The design loop is that we've already been inspired. What excites me. We've already done some framing, meaning that we have some constraints. We've been doing deadlines, hence me doing this now. We're going to have these time constraints, which is this 20-minute timer right here. We did a brainstorming loop last time. We did a prototyping. I then actually just tested it. I'm now taking what I learned, which here are some things down here that I am curious about. And then we're going to talk about how it felt. So, sorry. I was actually running with my children. I was running around with my children too. So I did a couple things. Took a break, did some pull-ups, ran around with my children. Now I'm sitting. Let me get a drink of water. I'm going to cut this part out probably. The part where you just have to watch me drink water. That's not going to be in there. Maybe it will. All right, let's talk about what we learned. So, I think it went well for a game that has no character-defining aspects. What do I mean by that? There was no features. I played what I would consider a warrior, a rogue, and a cleric. But I'll put zealot since that's what we're using. But I didn't do anything. None of them had any powers. The only thing that made them feel different was what skills they had and how they used those skills, right? So the zealot could maneuver people like a leader type character, and he inspired. He tried to get them to heal back up, right? The warrior had a little bit more armor and more hit points, and he did a little more damage. So that was pretty much all that was going on there. What did we like? And what did we not like? Well, let's go back through these rules a little bit, and we'll talk about what we liked, and then we're not doing the brainstorming yet, so we're not starting the clock. This is sort of that iterating. Take what you learned and go, well, I guess this is technically the open exploring brainstorming. So let's start the clock. Boop. Okay. Open exploring brainstorming. I liked the cinematic tactical action. Let's do this initiative here. We did a high-low roll every round. It means you're going to get some potential spike damage, so it's not a great tactic technically. But so against a big monster, this might not work. But what I thought was nice was there was this concept of if you're always second, it might feel like you're always on your heels and always using defensive abilities here. Is that a bad thing? Maybe it's not a bad thing, right? Maybe it means you just got to take one on the chin sometime, or maybe it means you have to disengage and get some distance and try to do something to get back on the offensive, right? So I don't know if I'm going to make this a solid rule. I think next time I'm just going to play around with some more of these cinematic tactical actions, okay? The auto attack. Auto attack I thought was fun. I thought that was interesting. I liked that the range. This came into play in terms of there was a ranged scenario where someone was trying to do a ranged attack and they were engaged, and so therefore you had to actually roll. Versus if they're in the open. I liked it. I thought that worked well. Melee, automatically getting to do damage when they're engaged. I like that too, but I don't know if I don't know a scenario where you're not going to be engaged in melee. But maybe there is one. Maybe the rogue could have done some stuff where they were like, you know what, I'm not going to be engaged, I'm going to attack. So I'm not going to strip that rule away. I just haven't seen a situation where it came up. Cinematic tactical actions. We never did take cover. So that could have been done against that necromancer. I don't know if do you need cover, right? So this is, do you need cover? Meaning like, in that scenario, I had specific walls, but like if you're in the open, you're probably not in an open arena, right? Like, it's probably not just sand and dirt unless the DM says that. Maybe that was an office, maybe, or like a warehouse, and there's boxes everywhere, and just the boxes aren't specifically denoted, the walls are. So maybe, thematically, someone could say, I take cover while they're moving. Maybe the rogue, when he was running towards the necromancer and got blasted, maybe he could have taken cover, right? Maybe, I don't know. Pierce, I thought that was nice. Evade, I thought evade was nice. Brace, I thought that was nice, especially when you added in this concept that bracing lasts for the whole round and evasion lasts just one time. That, to me, is a nice little balance between, I'm going to go Dex Monkey, no armor, but if I get multiple attackers on me, that could be a problem, versus I'm going to have good armor, and I'm going to try and tank some things. That was kind of nice. Rally was pretty potent. It was a pretty big heal, and there's probably a question of, like, can you rally someone who's unconscious? Probably not, right? Like, rally too much? Only if conscious, right? Round rest, we didn't have to do that. Counter, we did that. That was one way that we got in 2 attacks. We can't use a tactical action just to do another basic attack unless you're getting attacked. So I thought that worked out well for the fighter. And it didn't become a god ability, because when you use the fighter never did that against the all the skeletons, because there was enough of them around him that he was trying to brace. Quick cast didn't come into play. Disengage didn't come into play. Suppression never came into play. Taunt came into play, and that worked out well. And maneuver ally failed action, but it could have been cool, right? So far, I like the cinematic tactical actions. Maybe, do we want the equivalent of a brace for a Dex Monkey, where they go into full monk mode, you know, where you're dodging everything? I'm not going to care about it right now. I think that becomes a tactical decision. If you are getting yourself surrounded, then that's a problem, and maybe one of your allies needs to maneuver or come in and taunt. So we're going to say no, because I don't want any one person being just complete god, right? Skills and stats, I thought these were fine. We didn't use a lot of these. We pretty much just used these and inspire. So we'll just keep them, because that's fine, right? We don't need to worry about that yet. The enemies, they were bags of hit points. I forgot to use this that much, so maybe they would have snuck up on each other a lot more. 2d12 is a crap ton of damage. Maybe that's a lot for now. We only used disadvantage so far, and that was fine. What else? So let's take a look here. Did not succeed on the maneuver check, and that felt crappy. Well, let's go ahead and let's add in a my solution to that is add in the teamwork system, right? So the teamwork system in the previous pressure system was that you got these points, and it made sense that it was just all these static points that you would then add to your dice, because the dice were smaller, right? Now adding a 1 to a d20 doesn't really shift the odds as much as adding a 1 or a 2 to like a d8 versus a d6 roll, which is what previously happened. So let's say now, brainstorming wise, let's say that you, on misses, you accrue, that's not how you spell accrue, come on Trent, that's not how you spell accrue, come on Trent. Accrue teamwork points. These points turn in for +1 to damage, plus, let's get crazy, 1d6 to action. Right? That sound fine? So in essence, you're able to build up damage, or you're able to get bonus dice to rolling an effect. D6 might be a lot, but I don't want to roll D4s personally, so we're going to go with D6. Is there anything else that they might be nice for? Maybe use of a tactical action? That's a lot. I'm going to put that in no. But we're going to be, the reason I'm putting it here is to be on the lookout for when that might be cool, right? Maybe we'll put in here use of a passive power, or not passive power, use of a power of some sort, right? We might have teamwork abilities in the future. Okay. Evasion is a one-time use. Yeah, I like these. So I like these. So we'll add it up here. Bracing acts for rest of round. Evasion acts only on that combatant. So let's say that if they have 2 attacks, you can dodge both, right? If you're one-on-one, you can dodge all the attacks that guy has coming potentially. Is that fair? I think it's fair. Rallied too much? So let's say it's only when you're conscious, and let's say that it's... Let's keep it at 2d6. It just feels good. If you're doing 2d6 damage, you rally for 2d6. All right. 2d6 health to ally. Only able to do if they are conscious. Right, so you can't bring someone back to life with the rally. So we'll still say with the inspire skill. Yeah, I'm fine with that so far. What else do we got? Moving cinematic action. Yeah, dash. We're not putting dash here because dash is boring. Let's come back to it. What happens when you die? How do you save? Armor only against physical? Yes. That's a given. So how do you save? What save skills do we have? Let's go into here. And let's open up. Let's do saving throws, right? Saves. We could do... this is where... We could do combat, presence, exploration have their own saves. I don't know if I like that. And we would have technically, I think there's a couple other more of these. What do we have later here? We have prowess. Meh. So no, I don't think that's going to work. We could do the old classic fort will reflex. It's kind of uninspired. And so I don't know if I like that. I mean, it works, but I think it's a little uninspired because it's kind of already been done a good bit. We could go with body, mind, spirit. Also a trio that has been done. We could do physical, mental. It's the same thing, but physical, mental. We'll just say spiritual. Psychic. That's a little... no. We'll come back to it. The idea being that let's just put body, mind, spirit there because once again we're play testing. And we'll just say that you have to choose an 8, an 11, and a 13 to begin with. Why? Because we're just doing ease of access right now. Later on, it'll get more inspired, and we'll probably use different dice besides the D20. We'll try and switch things up. But we'll just say you got to choose an 8, 11, or 13 on there. Perfect. All right. We have a save system. Simple as that. What happens when you're dying? Well, don't get yourself to die. We'll get rid of this now. We have the teamwork system. And let's move this up here. Bum, 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 bum. All right, we got teamwork system. And then get rid of this down here. We've got 8 minutes. What happens when you're dying in a cinematic action for movement? So let's say, what's a cool word for? We can do, hurry. I mean, I guess that's kind of. I mean, that's already in Crown and Skull, but it makes sense. It's like a hurry. But does that actually entail? So this is in essence, what I want is this is a. So this is a question. Is this? I think that what's going to end up happening is that everything we have here are actually your tactical movements or your tactical actions, right? So it doesn't have to be cinematic yet. What I mean by that is that I think that cinematic is going to be your features powers. I think that's where the cinema comes in. So the tactical is that you get this tactical action every round. What's going to happen is that later on you're going to get new powers and features, and those are going to be very cinematic. So we'll just say for hurry, this is just dash though. Let's say this. Double movement can use... Do we have an action for like maneuver? Does a maneuver work? Let's do like... I almost want it to be more of like an exploration ability. So maneuver to me is like you're maneuvering someone else in combat. Whereas technically this is more like a... So I'm going to put scout. You can use scout skill to go over or under stuff, right? So now you don't have to... You could hop that wall. You could climb up that thing instead of have to take the stairs. Like... And I don't know, Scout is the one that makes sense to me currently most. I think that later on, it's probably going to be... We have this prowess, so maybe it's athleticism or acrobatics, right? Or mobility, duh. So later, we'll put later it's mobility skill, right? We just haven't added that in yet. All right, now what happens when you die? Let's do that real quick because we're closing in on time. What happens when you die? Currently, this just do a D4 timer, right? We'll make it more fun later on. Timer, D4 must be healed, stabilized. Stabilized with successful rally check. And then they're at 0. All right, we'll just do that for now. All right, we're out of there. Why do I want to get out of there? Because I want to go over here. Let's close this down a little bit. And I added some crap, right? What's the next step we're going through? Next, it's organizing. We're exploring ideas, then we're going to organize. So it's almost like I got another 20 minutes to do this. All right, so what did I add? I added teamwork, still a resource. You can maybe it has thresholds on your character sheet that shows uses. What was that? That was the idea that Daggerheart started implementing, where it's in essence Daggerheart, if you want to spend hope on yourself, it costs twice as much than if you spent it on someone else. So does this need a spend on others? Does this need a spend costs less to help others mechanic? I don't know if that's necessary. We'll see. I'm just putting it there. Action words for your skills. I don't think we have action. Strike, shoot. Yeah, those are kind of action-y. What else do we have? We have a hurry now, but it's its own little thing. I don't think we need to mess with that. Features and powers. Maybe we're going to add 1 power and 1 feature for everybody. Should these be... Oh, this... Okay, we'll come back to that. It's a big topic. So over here, I had a new pressure system idea. This is the idea that we could... I think we're going to stick with D20s now. But later on, if we wanted to add back in the pressure die system, we could, instead of having... My hesitation is I don't want to have a bunch of skills and a different die for each one of these skills. Because that's going to be, I think, a nightmare. Maybe it's not. But to me, that seems cluttered on a character sheet. So now the idea might be that, I got to do the math on it, but the idea being that, hey, let's just have the die that players use as a D8 no matter what. What they're rolling against, the pressure die, still could be a D4, D6, D8, D10, D12. And then their skill in these different abilities might be like anywhere from -1 to +3. Now, that would change the math a lot on what I previously did in the pressure system, mainly because... a +1 on a die when you're comparing 2 die is a lot, right? So it might end up being that maybe +3 is godly, but maybe most stats are somewhere between -1 and +1, -1, 0, +1, and then there's a couple that you might be able to get +2, right? So that might be another way of doing this. Then what you're doing is you're rolling the D8 most of the game against the pressure die, and then occasionally you're able to potentially roll like a D10 or D12 based on a feature or power. So that might be coming back into play. And I think that's going to reduce a lot of cognitive load of, oh, which dice am I using? Oh, I'm doing this, and now I'm rolling my d6 versus this. Okay, so this might be coming into effect, not this playtest, but later playtests, just to consider. All right, this is another thing I had. Consider engaged. You just roll damage, and distance you roll attack with static damage. Open legend concept for choices. Okay, yeah. So here's the idea that maybe when you miss, you still do some sort of static damage. Consider engaged. You just roll damage, and distance you roll attack with static. Oh, this was this idea. If we didn't like this, an alternative would be that instead of it being that you have a skill check, there's just a static damage, I think. No, one second. Consider engaged, you just roll damage, and distance, you roll attack with static damage. I think what I'm trying to say is, I think it's trying to bring in the idea of static damage as a different option, right? Where maybe you don't want range to be super powerful, and you're able to do like 2d6, 2d8 from a long distance. So instead, maybe there are certain things that have a static damage, right? I think everything worked out thus far. So I'm just going to put in here static damage options, just for consideration later. I don't want to mess with that at the moment because I think it worked out fine thus far. Anything else on here? Oh, this is the big one, right? And we're about to hit our next 20 minutes. In the next 20 minutes, what I think I'm going to do is talk about this, and I'm going to talk about we're going to build some one character feature for each class that we have playing right now. All right, features and powers. Should these be strategies and tactics? Discussion today about the difference. Have groups of strategies. Okay. So let's see if I can pull this up. We had a nice fun discussion on the Discord channel. And what this in essence starts to end up being is that you would have, for character customization, maybe you have strategies, and those strategies are things like dual wield, right? That's a strategy. And another strategy might be like dirty fighting, right? Like these are your strategies, and you would choose a strategy. And each strategy comes with, we'll say, 3 tactics, right? And then whatever that tactic is a feature or a power, right? So let's go ahead and now this leads nicely into our next 20 minutes, which is going to be, let's now do some power creation. Let's go ahead and bring these guys back to where they were. I'm going to start the next timer. Boop. And the Zealot, I think he had 16 hit points. Our Rogue had 14. And our Fighter had 20. And now we're going to create powers. And we're also going to do bodies and saves and all that kind of stuff. And so we have saves. And I'm just going to make this easy. I'm going to say body 8. Here, we'll do it like this. Body 8. Mind 13. Spirit 11. All right. Rogue, let's do saves. Body 11. Mind 8. Spirit 13. Just making stuff up here. It's just fun. And then down here we have saves. Body 13, mind 11, spirit 8. Okay. All right. So we got our saves in there. Now let's come up with strategies, features, powers. Let's break the game a little bit in some shape, way, or form. Now, I don't want to go into... Let's do it this. I think that these are the equivalent of first level people. So let's give them each one defining element for a warrior, rogue, and a zealot that's going to be something fun for them to play with. That's not going to be a whole ton of stuff, right? Meaning that adding a whole strategy with 3 tactics, even though that sounds like a lot of fun for me to start designing. A lot of fun. I don't want to go there yet because we're testing the base mechanics. So, okay, back to that. So let's just create one concept per class. So what is something that our warrior wants to do? And underneath our warrior is going to be our battlemaster, our fury, and our seeker. And so what did we have for defining characteristics for them before? Okay? I built a whole damn game previously, so might as well use some of the concepts there, right? So if we come in here and we go to table of contents, let's do it this way. Oh, darn it. And we come down to warrior. We had the idea of an opportunity attack. Not that everyone had that. We had teamwork generation, being that you were engaged with an enemy. I don't know if I'm going to go to this passive, even though I love this idea. Let's not go to the passives yet. But maybe we say something, and I think that's it currently. Combat, specialty, you're able to sustain damage. You understand combat. It's a place that you belong. So I don't think we're using opportunity attack because we don't really have some sort of drawback to being engaged thus far, like the enemies. Maybe it's something where I don't want it to be a passive. I want it to be a resource, right? I want it to be some sort of resource. What loop do we want to have in our game? Do we want people to build up a resource and then they spend it? And so maybe that goes back to that teamwork is on misses. Or maybe just every round you build up a point. Like every round, you get a new point. And so just every round of combat, there's a new point. And maybe there are some ways the points go up faster, right? So let's I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to. Where I'm going to say resource. Every round goes up 1. Every class has a way to increase that. And then we'll say that this is how you spend it. Spend for... That's like the basic way of spending it, maybe. So that's then what we can say is that, why don't we just give him we'll give him a passive of engaged equals +1 resource. I'm just calling it resource. So it's another way they can get it up. And then maybe we say something like spend 2 to get an attack. Is that a lot? Spend 3 to get an attack? Spend 1 resource to get an extra d6 of damage. Can be used as a separate attack on a different engaged combatant. Is that disgusting? All right, what does this mean? This means that in round 2, my warrior goes and gets engaged with the target. Round 2, they gain a resource and they get a second one for being engaged. They now have 2 resources. They could, if engaged with 2 targets, this character could do 2d10 to 1 target, and they could add another 2d6 to that target, or they could do 2d6 to this, 2d10 to this target, 1d6 to that one, 1d6 to that one. Is that too much? I don't know. let's leave it there. We'll find out soon. We'll say ability, right? The problem is if that's too good and now you don't actually want to give him any other powers. We'll probably cap that. It's probably going to get capped in some way. I have no idea. We're finding out. So this is spike damage. This is also spread damage. I think that let's back out and let's ask this question. What are we trying to denote? I think we're trying to denote that you can do. So let's do this. Spend one extra damage of. Let's do this. Whoops. What happened? Can spend one resource to do d6 damage to other engaged enemies. Now, this might be a bummer, right? Where it's like, now I've got my main target, and I can then do a d6 damage. I can do another d6 damage to that target. I can do a d6 to these targets. I think the idea is that this is supposed to be like multi-attack, right? Multi-attack? Where the idea is that you as a fighter are able to, like, or warrior, are able to go at it with multiple targets. So let's just keep it there, and we'll see what we think if it gets too broken. So what's the rogue's ability? Well, previously, and we'll just keep it as is, was that previously the idea was that move zones equals +1 resource, right? Where the idea of having the rogue moving around the battlefield is only beneficial for the party because they're disrupting things. We'll keep it as that for now, even though that might not work out in the long run. Let's take a look at the rogue and what the idea was behind the rogue initially. Oh God, this was a hot mess. So it's not really well defined yet in this one. You could stealth quickly, uncanny dodge, cunning action. So maybe this is where this comes in, right? Maybe the rogue can fast evasion. No, let me just say it this way. Let me say it out loud first before I work like this. This is how I work, people. I'm sorry. Fast evasion. This might break what we were already trying to denote, right? Where it's spend 2 resources to use a second evade this round, right? Another. You might store a bunch. Another evade this round. I think that's fine. And I think that we could also look up here and say, look, they're already getting +1 damage, +1 d6 to an action. So they have something to do with 1 resource. This gives the rogue something to do if they have 2 resources, right? So then the question here is this can spend 2 resources to do 1d6 damage to every engaged enemy, right? Yep, perfect. Okay, so that makes it feel better. So if they had 4 resources, they could do 2d6. Because maybe 1d6 isn't a lot if you're up against, like, those skeletons that had good defenses. And so we'll put in here future modifier? Question mark? Because I don't know. Maybe we'll have modifiers in the future. Okay. Now what about the zealot? What does the zealot do? Good question. I'm glad you asked that. Let's say resource. Okay, so previously I would have said, I think that they got, the zealot previously generated team works by putting conditions on players or enemies, anyone. They got a condition for putting in, oh, and there's a heal. Okay. So let's consider that, right? We have the potential for a heal, and we have resource generation. Okay. We already have this rally ability that anyone can do with Inspire. And the drawback is that it means you're not getting your tactical action to do something else. This might be way too powerful. And it could be that we take this down to 1d6. And instead we have a heal here. And let's do 3d6. Let's make it potent. So let's say spend 2 resources to do 2d6. Let's do 2d6. 2d6 heal, right? So then there's no inspire check. It's automatic. It just costs the resources. So how do they generate resources? They generate resources through what? Let me make this bigger so you can see this side too. A little bit better. They generate resources through, is it positioning? So far, everything's been positioning. We could say they generate resources by being unengaged, but that's not very fair because we might have some, because remember, one of the zealots is a justice, which is kind of paladin-y, and they're definitely going to be engaged. So what feels good for generating resources? I don't want to have it based on what tactical decisions you make. Like, I don't want it to be every time you rally, you get an extra resource, because that's crappy. Because now you're going to want to rally. You feel like it's your job to rally, and that I don't want zealots to feel like they're pigeonholed into a role, right? So, what is a cool concept behind resource, or behind positioning and combat for a zealot? Crappity crap. This is the fun part of the video where you get to watch me in consternation and watch me in pain as I try to determine. This is no longer entertainment. Maybe it is for some of you guys. I'm going to try and talk out loud, though. There's probably something to do with... There's probably something that could be said about still doing some sort of buff-debuff, right? But the problem is there's currently not a buff or debuff in this system. Technically, if you rallied someone or you maneuvered someone, these are two things that this guy's good at. Inspire, maneuver, like those are things you're doing for your ally. Adding Pierce to someone else, maybe that's an ability later on. You give someone else the ability to do Pierce. That's kind of fun. No one did any suppression. So you have this maneuver, but once again, I don't want to incentivize a gameplay loop where you have to maneuver people in order to get a resource. So we have a resource for being engaged, resource for moving around, resource for being free is kind of the mage, originally the mage thing, where it was like a talent. If you're not engaged, you get, I think it was like if you're in your own zone or something, but I don't want to get too technical in that sense. So I don't know. I don't know a way currently of giving a resource as a player, right? There could be a way of taking damage, and by sacrificing yourself in some way, you take damage, and therefore it's like siphoning damage, and then you get a little resource for that. There's something maybe there. Because if I look back at the zealots, I think that one of them in particular one of them I had an idea that the way that they would start to heal was through pain. Not necessarily pain, but it was like they would... I shall carry your burden. Take conditions from allies. Yeah, this keeper was the idea that they would start to take on damage or take on conditions, and they would be able to use those to help them. That's very mechanically sounding, but I'm okay with it. So maybe there's something to be said about if someone gets hurt, you can take damage from them. I don't like that. I like the idea of, I'm just going to put in here, I'm not sure yet, but take damage, take condition. There are no conditions yet in the system, so it's kind of like, what does that mean? Take damage, take condition, switch AC, intercept. Like all of these things are a little bit too finicky. Maybe it's, you know what we could do is that you parse these out, right? So maybe you have tactical team tactics and you have player tactics, right? And so now take cover is a player tactic. Pierce, player tactic. Evade, brace. Here, this one is technically a team tactic, right? Suppression is a team tactic. Taunt, maneuver, ally. Those are team tactics. Now, the question becomes, do I feel good about saying, yeah, I'm not pigeoning you into one... I'm not pigeoning you into one specific maneuver, but maybe if now, if you use a team tactic, you now are getting a resource. Maybe that's their role. Maybe they're the leaders, right? Use +1 resource for using team tactic. Whew, look at that. Under the wire. 4 seconds left. And I think that's it for now. Boom. All right. We reset the clock, and now we are on to the phase of cleaning. Elimination. Do we add anything that we don't like, or is there anything that we need to eliminate? Right? Let's go back through. We have side-based initiative, and I think we're keeping that. I was doing high or low to switch it. We still need to add a monster ability. Right now I'm just going to keep the same monsters I had. And then we'll start getting to some funky monsters later on. Auto attack. We automatically attack. If we're engaged, we automatically do damage as a melee. If we're not engaged, that means we have to swing. Ranged. If the enemy is not engaged, we automatically hit them. If they're engaged with an ally or someone else, or they have cover, then I have to roll. The cover system, technically the way I made it is if they have cover, it's disadvantaged as well. Otherwise, perform skill checks for the fire shoot. Got it. Tactical actions, we now broke them into team tactics and player tactics. Or I guess this is like solo. We'll just say individual. I'll say solo. So an individual fits better, but I'm just going to say solo tactics. And we added into here, we added the hurry tactic. And then we added in a little bit more color commentary to the rally being a D6. We added into, we said, do you need cover for taking cover? And I think not, because most of the time there should be stuff around. We added in that evasion only acts on one person, but all their attacks you're getting from them, whereas brace acts for the rest of the round, which is, I think that's nice. Cinematics can be its own thing later. We added in some saving throws, so that'll be nice because we'll be able to do some saves with some of those monster abilities. And we added in Nothing here, nothing there. Health and dying, we said that now you're going to get a D4 and then you need to be rally check to stabilize. I think that there's still a question of, I'm just going to put it here, we're not adding anymore, but the question of what do you do while you're out, down? I think there should be some sort of fun mini game, personally. I don't know. We'll see. Teamwork, we're coming back to, we'll say pause. Instead, we just called it resource. And this is all on you as a player, that every round you're just going to get a resource. And then every class has different ways to use that. And then everyone can use their resources for +1 damage or +d6. Okay. It's nice. Modifications. I'm going to... I said I wasn't going to change anything, but I'm going to just change this because the way damage is working, I'm going to say +2 damage per one. Modifications don't change. Fun resources later. Control chaos. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm excited about that. We should probably now move these. Let's make these... I'm moving these down to there because they're down the resource section. Oh, yep, that's fine. Boop, boop. Then we have our classes. Our warrior, if he's engaged, he's going to get +1 resource for the round. He can spend 2 resources to do another d6 to every engaged enemy. That could be fun. It gives them the idea of multi-attack. You want to be engaged, you're getting in the fray. I like it. A rogue, anytime you move zones, this might be a little hard, depending on what the... I mean, heck, if you have an encounter and there's only 2 zones, he's not going to be hopscotching between the 2, so that might be... We might have to figure that out differently. Maybe the rogue gets +1 for every solo tactic they use, right? Maybe. We'll come back. They get spend 2 resources to use another evade for the round. It's not very offensive, but I think that we're going to get different ways for the rogue to do offensive stuff later. Right now, they're just slippery. And a zealot, you get to spend 1 resource for using team tactics. Anytime you use a team tactic, you get +1 resource. You can spend 2 resources to do a heal for 2d6, and we reduced rally. There's one thing we have to do. This is the only tricky thing. Right, where this is technically passive ability, right? And this might not be fair. Passive ability. And this is this a tactical ability, right? Tactical action. That's the only potential not fair, is that the heal, because that heals, you're having to do it as a tactical action, whereas this is sort of, is this an extra tactical action for the round? And this is this a extra passive damage, or is this a tactical action? Right? Are these tactical action options, or are they other things that kind of happen? I'm going to keep it as is for now. I don't know if I have any other eliminations. I think we already kind of did some tinkering to begin with. So we'll keep it as it is. We're giving you back 13, 14 minutes of your life because the video's done now. So I will hit the bell, hit subscribe. I'll add some tags in the bottom. The main thing will be I'm now going to do another playtest, right? I'm not going to do it today. But within the next 6 to 7 days, another playtest, another design loop. Let's keep this rolling. All right, guys. Have a good one.